It was late, Thursday night in Las Vegas, or as my friends like to call it, Lost Vegas, home of the damned souls hell forgot. Beneath the glitter and gold, there weren't dreams so much as the burned-out husks of a few hundred neon promises, flickering their last in the desert heat. The good people of Vegas pretended the dark side didn't exist, but it was always there, humming under the surface like a bad transformer. I lived in that dark side. I lived in the cracks the tourists never see and the locals refuse to look at. Name's Lassiter. Learn not to expect much from life because life doesn't give much. I don't live in a house or an apartment. I do have a dog. Mud as tall as my knee. I call him Belle. He's an ugly thing. Feed him right, scratch him under the chin a couple of times a day, and he's loyal. At least more so than my last cheating boyfriend. My job? I'm a pro at numbers. Never gamble. Only stupid people are sucked into that. No, I play stocks. Real money, real outcomes. And no, I don't waste my time with fancy houses or cars. I live in a motel. They clean for me. Who needs a car? Insurance is a scam. Why waste money? Then there's parking fees, and you can never find a free parking spot anywhere. Don't get me started about car washes. What a scam. I have a discount bus pass and can travel anywhere in Clark County. I eat at all the best places, like Taco Joe's and Mildred's Burgers, and I hang out at all the classy joints, like the Back Alley Bar. If you live right, interest and investments take the place of corporate requirements. I'm a professional deadbeat minus the kids. I live on a fixed income so I don't have to torture myself with the 9 to 5. I was walking down the street, going nowhere except my couch, when I stopped by some corner mart on Bonanza Street. That's in East Las Vegas. To get a day-old sandwich. Those are usually discounted, and they taste all right. Bread's a little stale, but oh well. East Las Vegas. If there is a part of Vegas that is as far from the glamour and artificial glitz of the Strip, it's here. No one is rich. Nobody cares. Everyone works at least one job to try to live. That's where our little drama begins. Not fireworks, but a cheap sandwich, BLT on Italian white. Don't ask me what makes it Italian. It's Wonder Bread doing a bad impression. The fluorescents hummed like bored crickets, and the ice cream cooler wheezed like an old woman with asthma. I'm not much to look at, nor smell either. Hygiene is a dish best served steaming, a shower hot enough to peel the paint off the walls. Like the guy at the counter. He could peel the paint off my walls any time. Skin bronzed deep by the sun, hair just this side of midnight, eyes crystal clear and honest. He wore a light blue short-sleeved button-down with a patch over the left pocket that read, Envy Energy. Sweat, grease, and hard living had stained his shirt in all the right places, lived in Levi's, boots that had seen as much wear as he had. He made my stock market tick. His boots were scuffed, especially on the inside, and a dark wood splinter stuck out of the laces. Bet a can of dog food this guy climbed lodgepole pines or telephone poles for a living. Since we don't have pines out here, I'll stick with the telephone poles. Yep, they are still around. Only a few uppity folk demand that they be buried underground, along with a ton of other crap. This was a good-looking man who'd seen some living, and I bet some living he wished he hadn't seen. A wedding band lived on his finger, but it was worn and pitted. It had seen some living, too. Not old, not young, his eyes still held a spark somewhere behind the sights that had dampened his soul. Though life's bitterness was close to extinguishing the little bit of fire struggling to stay alive. He wasn't alone either. A kid, maybe 10, maybe 11, 12, Looked like a miniature version of dear old Dad, except he wore board shorts and a t-shirt with the numbers 555 on the back. The man reached for the sandwich, the BLT, the same one I wanted, the last of the discount ones. The bacon looked anemic. I should have said something, claiming that little bit of cheap food for myself, but instead, I embarrassed myself. "Take 2, friend. They're on me," I said in a voice rusty from disuse. "Consider this a cheap date or some such nonsense." He snickered. When he didn't move, I picked up the discount BLT and a regular BLT and placed them into his hand. For a second, our fingers touched. I don't believe in electricity when you meet someone, or energy drawing you together. After what I've lived through, none of that New Age crap makes sense. This time, I felt it, kind of like a tingle. So did he. Don't get your panties bunched up, probably a static electric charge. I picked up a ham and cheese on wheat. I hate wheat bread, but it was close to where I stood. I tossed him a couple bags of Sun Chips, took a Doritos for myself, and paid for the both of us. I'm good on money, lousy with most other things, like fashion. Goodwill is as styling as I get. Working man mumbled a surprised thanks. I nodded and walked out the door. Didn't know his name, but I did know where he worked. Didn't expect to see him again. Hell, was I wrong. Hey, my friends. Gio and Bentley with a news story set in Las Vegas, the city that never sleeps, never stops, and collects strays like musty quarters. If you would, click the thumbs up icon. It lets the algorithm know that people like the story, and then it will share it with more people. As always, I respond to comments. I love that part. And now, on to Chapter 2. I have a room in the Adams Heights Motel, finest rooms in the city. Not really. It's no Mandalay Bay, but it's cheap. The manager, Arjun Patel, doesn't ask questions except the usual, "Show me the money." My cash is as good as anybody else's. He always checks every $20 bill for forgeries. The baseball bat behind his counter is a reminder of what happens if you cause problems. I don't cause problems. Arjun doesn't ask questions. I've stayed here for 3 years. Crisp sheets, light smells of pine cleaner. Neighbors can be a little noisy. I quickly give the bed the once-over just to make sure. One blue light scan and I relax. Verify, trust, verify. Always. Yes, I have a blue light app on my phone. Doesn't everyone? If they don't, how do they trust their beds? No, I'm not paranoid. I have reason to be cautious. That's another story. I digress. I had returned to Adam Heights, room 9, second floor. The room smelled like Belle had been cooped up all day. He had. I took him out to the patch of lawn that pretended to be green. In reality, it was solid yellow-brown and was about as dead as my love life. That was when I got a call. "You Lassiter?" "Yeah," I replied. "This is Thomas at the Bonanza Gas and Groceries. You were here earlier today?" Sounded like a kid who had barely started shaving. "Probably," I replied. "Your card didn't go through." "Just a second," I said, switching to my banking app. The card had worked. Money had been deducted. Something else was going on. I could hang up, argue, or if I wanted to find out what was going on, I could play along. I have this devilish curious streak. It's one of the reasons I live in the motel. This is Vegas. Time to play the odds. "That's odd," I replied. "The transaction never showed up on my account." The lies simply flowed off my tongue. Funny how lying is so easy. The kid on the other end stammered, "Really?" I tried to hide the chuckle. "Really, Thomas? What do you want to do about it?" There was a long pause, as if I'd broken whatever script was running through the kid's head. "Can you come by tomorrow, about noon, and we'll fix it?" "I get off work at 5. Another lie. I don't have a job, but it sounded believable. The line went blank, as if he were covering the speaker with his thumb. Then he came back. 5 will work. After I hung up, I remembered the question I should have asked. How did Thomas of Bonanza Gas and Groceries get my cell number? Chapter 3. What's my job? I inspect sidewalks for cracks and unsafe walking conditions. It's a volunteer job, which means I'm underpaid, make my own hours, and go where I want. My second job is feeding seagulls. They eat anything. I am severely allergic to paperwork and deathly allergic to wearing a suit. Dishpan hands is a medical condition I avoid because I eat out at every meal. Nothing fancy, I keep it cheap. I have a superpower. I can track down a $1 burger and fries or cheap tacos from anywhere in the city. Don't know if it works outside Vegas, but I don't have reason to leave. I made my usual rounds at the thrift stores, checking sidewalks and inspecting parks. Do I have a real job? No. Do I want one? No. Do I have any ambition? To earn a second $1 million. They say it's easier than the first 10 million. So I'd figure I'd start there. At 5:15, I hopped on a bus back to East Vegas. To kill time, I double-checked my banking, scrambled through my portfolio, made a couple of adjustments, and giggled. I had stayed in budget. It's always the simple things that make you the happiest. The old woman across the aisle looked at me like I was looking at porn. I smiled back. She spotted something interesting out the window and broke contact. And then my stop arrived. I climbed out at Bonanza Street. I had to walk a block in the late August heat. In Vegas, that's around 105 Fahrenheit, or 40 degrees Celsius. Hot. Can't wait to get to the Autumn Heights. Home, sweet, air-conditioned home. Complication numero uno. There was a cop car at Bonanza Gas and Groceries. Complication numero dos. A Las Vegas power and light truck was parked in the lot. Chapter 4. Do I go in? Do I turn around and find another sidewalk? Hell, I'm absurdly curious about life. I walked right up to the police officer, a Hispanic woman that looked tough as steel spikes and twice as nasty, and said, "This place closed?" "Yes," the woman said, her voice strained with exhaustion. "And no. What's your business?" Something about this situation began to excite me. The sidewalk had cracked. Time to do my job. "Credit card issue," I replied. "They say I didn't pay. What's going on?" Her eyes narrowed, judging the dirty beggar in front of her, me, condemning me by my looks, maybe my smell. I did have a shower today, but then mostly my looks. "You're the guy who met Jack last night? You Lassiter?" Jack? She must mean the guy and his kid. I narrowed my eyes too. Guilty? I must be famous or in trouble. Cop knows my name. She pulled a small notebook from her pocket and made a note, completely ignoring my unasked question. "Can I go inside?" I finally asked. A dark half-smile flickered on her face. "Don't be stupid." At my look, she faced the building and gestured with her thumb. "It's a war zone inside. They need a warning label. Divorce in progress. Please stand back." "That's why you babysitting the place?" She snorted. "Lots of good that will do. Looks like they called a ceasefire." She nodded at a detective exiting the building. A woman, about 35, tired eyes, grim smile, fresh lipstick. She didn't just walk, she strode, jacket swaying enough to see the badge clipped to her belt. I squinted. The badge read, Detective Briggs LVMPD, and then a number. Detective Briggs would look good in heels, but she wore white running shoes instead. Hoka by the design. High-end running shoes. All that money and they didn't match her black slacks. That would mean the guy, Jack Briggs, was inside, his bronzed face streaked with something, probably worry. His tired eyes met mine, only for an instant, and they widened as if seeing me gave him hope. His kid ran back to the cooler to grab a drink. I turned back to the detective. She didn't wear perfume. Her face relaxed into that all-business mask. No smile, hard eyes, head slightly tilted as if she didn't believe anything I said, even though I hadn't said anything. "Evening," I said, hoping a little politeness would help. It didn't. "You're Lassiter?" Not a question, more of an accusation. "I'm famous," I quipped, nodding to the building. "That the X?" "Soon to be," she replied. "Bet that's not soon enough." "Something like that." The pause was awkward and silent, the kind of silence that happens just before the gun goes off. I beat the cop to the draw. "Why did you call me here?" "Wasn't me." She snorted, her jaw stiffening slightly. She walked past. Then the police officer walked past, and both climbed into the police car. Must be my lucky day. I didn't get arrested. The answer was inside the store. Jack, his kid, and the 2 attendants. Somebody called me. Take your pick. 75% chance of getting it wrong. If I guess right, do I win the Cupid doll? Chapter 5. I waited for the cop car to drive off before I walked inside the alleged crime scene. Every instinct screamed to run away, but I have a nose for dog crap. An invisible chain tugs me into it every time. Like a fool, I always step in it. I pushed the door open, smelling overdone hot dogs and hot chocolate. Somebody had popped the top off a ketchup bottle because the store stunk. A kid, maybe 21, was at the counter. He had a big zit right in the middle of his forehead and 3 more on his nose. Smooth cheeks, no sign of a shadow. Didn't look like he shaved. Ever. Must have been him that called me. Jack looked at me, stare unreadable. Then he went to the sandwiches. "You called me yesterday?" I said to the 21-year-old attendant. Said my account hadn't processed. The kid looked down. Name tag read Sal. Hope it's not short for salamander. Knowing parents these days, wouldn't put it past them. Credit card issues seemed like a pretty standard issue, except we both knew it was bogus. The kid paled and mumbled, "He gave me $50 to lure you here, needed the money, and it seemed pretty harmless." Sal's confession hung in the air like the smell of that busted ketchup bottle, sour, sticky, and impossible to ignore. $50, I repeated, because sometimes you have to say a thing out loud to believe it. That's what my dignity goes for these days. Sal winced. I didn't think it was like a big deal. "Kid," I said, feeling like I was teaching the kindergarten class, "anytime someone pays you cash to call a stranger into a situation involving cops, detectives, and a credit card machine having a nervous breakdown, it's a big deal." I flashed a nice, big, insincere smile. Sal swallowed hard, Adam's apple bobbing like it wanted to escape. Jack hovered near the sandwich rack, pretending to read labels he'd probably memorized years ago. His kid was still at the cooler, door open, cold air spilling out like the store was trying to breathe for him. I stepped closer to the counter. "Who paid you?" Sal's eyes darted toward the cooler. Quick, guilty, the kind of glance that tells you everything except the name. I turned to Jack. He looked back, his hands showing a glimmer of steel. "Nice to see you again. Guess it's my turn to pay for the date?" I let my raised eyebrows do the talking. "Is that why the police are here?" He smiled, the words fumbling around his head, afraid to spill out. Chapter 6. A third voice joined the conversation. Calm. Too calm. The kind of calm that meant they'd been rehearsing this moment in their head. "I was the one who paid the $50. I'm Benji Briggs." It wasn't Jack. It wasn't Sal. It wasn't the other attendant. It was the boy, Benji Briggs, 10 years old, or a short 12-year-old. Skater hoodie, Nike patch on the arm, rumpled khaki shorts that had seen better days. Face was earnest in the way only kids and con artists can manage. Benji stepped out from behind the cooler door like he'd been hiding in plain sight. The orange soda in his hand fizzed quietly, the only sound in the room. His face was pale, but his eyes, those were steady, too steady for a kid his age. Jack's breath caught. Benji, why? The boy didn't look at his father. He looked at me. You were the only one who talked to us last night, he said. The only one who didn't treat us like we were in the way. I blinked. So you lured me here as a thank you? He shook his head. No. Dad needed someone to get a drink with. The divorce messed him up and he doesn't have any friends left. You were nice, so I figured you wouldn't mind. Jack didn't just go red. He went Ferrari red, the kind of shade you only see on sports cars and parents caught off guard by their own kid. For a second, nobody breathed. Even the soda in Benji's hand seemed to stop fizzing, like it didn't want to get involved. Jack sputtered, Benji, that is not... I wasn't... The words tripped over each other, panicked like little gymnasts with no mat to land on. Benji shrugged, completely unfazed. Dad, it's fine. You said you needed to get out more. I just helped. Helped? Jack croaked. You bribed a stranger to show up at a convenience store surrounded by cops? Wasn't planning on Mom being here, Benji nodded, as if this were a perfectly reasonable summary. Sal raised a timid hand. Technically he bribed me? Jack shot him a look that could have melted the ice in the cooler. I leaned an elbow on the counter. So let me get this straight. You paid Sal $50 to lure me here because your dad needed a friend? Benji nodded again, earnest as a golden retriever, or a relative begging for money. Sal raised his hands in surrender. Your number was in the reward system, so it was real easy to call you. I'll give you the $50 if you promise not to tell my boss. Keep it, the pint-sized matchmaker replied. I've got another $50 to give Lassiter for drinks and stuff. Where did you get the money? Jack asked. Benji shrugged. Told Mom I needed new shoes. Jack groaned into his hands. Please stop talking. Manna began to fall from heaven, or at least puzzle pieces. Was that your mom, the detective? The kid smiled. She picked me up last night, and she just dropped me off at a neutral location before she heads back to work. Well, I said, this has to qualify as the most unique way to get asked out on a date. So I won't get in trouble? Sal asked, his shoulders beginning to sag. I'm sorry about this, Jack muttered. I looked at Benji. Kid, you could have just asked me to grab a drink with your dad. No need for cloak and dagger convenience store theatrics. Benji frowned. Yeah, but you wouldn't have come. I opened my mouth to argue, then closed it again, because he wasn't wrong. Jack peeked at me through his fingers. Please, don't listen to him. I don't need... Friends? I offered. He groaned louder. This can't be happening, Jack finally said. Benji, you are in so much trouble. Benji brightened and looked at me. So does that mean you'll hang out with Dad? Jack looked like he wanted the floor to open up and swallow him. And me? I suddenly wasn't sure whether to laugh, leave, or ask if the $50 was still on the table. For the first time in a long time, I smiled. It needed practice. I handed my phone to Jack. Benji took it and typed their name and number into the contacts. I should have been annoyed, should have turned and walked away. Instead, the cracks in Las Vegas became a little less dark. Chapter 7. Back at my bat cave, my room at the Adam Heights, I lay on my bed. I love how they give me clean sheets every day, and thought about the routes my life had taken. There had almost been someone, once. 3 years back, Rob didn't like the way I lived, wanted more and more and more, like it was a disease. He spent far beyond the national debt. I didn't. I don't. We split. Dating and socializing don't come easy for me. How long had it been? Obama's administration, Bush's, Clinton's. I wasn't even born then. Had it been that long? I checked my contacts. Jack's phone number and address. Stark. Vibrant. A fresh chance. How long had it been since I had hoped there could be more to life? My phone buzzed. Caller ID said Las Vegas PD. I bet they weren't selling raffle tickets. I picked up and said, Bueno. Love that opening. It drives people crazy. You wouldn't believe how many spam callers give up with that single word. There was a pause before a woman spoke. Mr. Lassiter? I listened, but said nothing. Her voice trembled before continuing. I thought you should know the kind of man you are about to associate with. Time to go on the offensive. This is an official police line. That means I'm being recorded. You're being recorded. Aren't you supposed to announce something about this call will be recorded for legal purposes? What are you setting me up for? She paused, but when she spoke, her voice gained a confidence that was masked before. Mr. Lassiter, this is a courtesy call and is not being recorded. Good. She's on the defensive. Then this call is a personal call abusing Clark County resources. Interesting. That either makes this official business or you are squandering state funding so I don't get your real phone number. That could be considered ethically questionable. Either way, all calls in or out of a police department are recorded. Silence on her end. I waited for 3 seconds. The woman didn't say anything. She had called with a purpose. I had denied that. I won, but I didn't feel like winning. Goodbye, I said. The bar down the street, the back alley, had dancers tonight. I like watching men sweat. Jack's a cheater, she quickly yelled. His affair destroyed our marriage. Don't trust him. Lady, I don't trust anyone, I replied, speaking slowly and deliberately into my phone. Not even you. Especially not you. I ended the call anyway. Didn't know if the police had recorded the call. That was a bluff. But I'm stupid. I had recorded the call. Disgruntled X is a detective. Disgruntled. A nice word. One that has a nice rhythm to it. Disgruntled. And she walked in white running shoes, carried a badge, and applied lipstick like it was her personal weapon of choice. Reminded me of a friend. I used that word loosely. He was a cop. Once a cop, always a cop. Never stopped being a cop. Not at home with his family, especially not when his son told him he was gay. Authority was his holier-than-thou, and I was expected to worship at the altar of, I am your father. His reason to lord it over us lowly pawns. Dad threatened jail if I didn't change. At 17, I ran and never looked back. Dad wasn't much of a friend. Or a dad. But a friend, a real friend, might be just what the bartender ordered. A friend with a son with overachieving matchmaker genes. I grunted, sighed, and rolled my eyes. The relationship, if there was any, with Jack and Benji, just got a little bit spicy. Good thing I like spice. Gives me indigestion, but I like the burn. Especially when paired with an aged whiskey to wash it down. I'd sit at my usual booth, talk with some of the guys, and pray that my life never changes. I'd order a double, on the rocks, and stare into the amber liquid. Maybe I'd see my future. Probably only see melting ice cubes as I slowly went broke, losing $1 bills. but what a way to go broke. I left the motel and walked to the bar, thinking about men climbing silver poles. Chapter 8. The clientele at the back alley was the usual mix of businessmen, bikers, femboys, and college degenerates, all intensely ogling guys in sequined G-strings, gyrating around silver poles. The air stank of vodka and something sweet, not oranges, more like wine and blackberries. The music was loud, the bar was dark, and the narrow spotlights highlighted the dancers' shoulders. My phone buzzed with a text. Jack, want to get something to eat? And so it begins. And so I smiled. With the erotic techno playing in the background and the low babble of the men connecting over drinks, I called Jack back. He picked up on the second ring. I replied, "Sure, how does Taco Joe's sound? Tomorrow for lunch. I'll buy. You realize this is our second date." I could hear the dumbfounded look through the phone. "You bought last time. I need to pay you back." I didn't know how to respond, so I fell back on my trademark dark sarcasm. "Is that before or after your wife cleans you out?" "Soon to be ex-wife, and before you ask, she can afford a fancy lawyer." "Do you have one?" I asked. His office is in a strip mall next to an H&R Block and Einstein's Bagels, and he graduated 2 years ago. "He any good?" "Does it matter? He fits the budget." We talked until a voice on the other side of the phone yelled, "Dad, I'm going to bed." Chapter 9. Taco Joe's was a bright red food truck with the name slapped across the side in bold white letters. A giant smiling face of a Hispanic man loomed over a taco, so overstuffed with lettuce and cheese it looked ready to burst. Paco and Maria Estevaria own the place, longtime amigos. Maria and I went to high school together. Paco and I were friends. Maria never got jealous, said she was too much woman for me to tempt her man away. I ate there for free because they owed me a favor. Besides, I like tacos. Paco handled the meat, carving it straight off the spit. Tacos al pastor, the Mexican cousin of Middle Eastern shawarma. Pork and beef layered together, seasoned with peppers, onions, and whatever was in season. Fresh, hot, and folded into Maria's homemade tortillas, with slices of avocado, cilantro, sometimes pineapple, sometimes tomato, all finished with a bright red mole sauce. Maria made the tortillas fresh every day. Hundreds of them, just like her abuela taught her. Sometimes she'd slice them into ribbons, fry them crisp, and dust them with cinnamon and sugar, a special treat for the kids. If I called anyone family, they were it. They were parked outside the Capitol Arena, a big MMA event tonight. Those can be fun, but I prefer hockey. I've got season tickets to the Golden Eagles home games. I stepped off the bus a little before 1. Jack and Benji had already arrived. The truck sat off to the side of the parking lot, half a dozen tables with big umbrellas beside it. An awning stretched from the serving window, throwing a patch of shade a dozen feet out. The smell alone made me hungry. Slow-roasted barbacoa pork, roasted beef, and fresh bread drifted through the heat. Paco had the radio tuned to some mariachi band, and a dozen people stood in line. Las Vegas was scorching today. People clustered in islands of shade, but a few brave souls sat in the sun. Jack and Benji were in Jack's work truck, sipping drinks the size of basketballs. I sauntered over and knocked on the door. "Anyone home?" The window slid down, and Jack smiled. I hugged Paco, then Maria, then asked about their kids, about business, about Michoacan, their home state. Maria bustled around with a cleaning cloth, wiped down a table, and brought us plates of tacos with beans and rice. The salsa was good, the food was better, and the company was exactly what I needed. So was the cerveza. Our conversation was smooth, easy and fun. I wondered if we'd see each other again after today. Benji snarfed down 2 tacos. Jack had 4. So did I. When I got back to Adam Heights, I called another friend who owed me a favor. Louise Withers. She's a judge. I'm not stupid. Not with stocks, not with finances, not with people. Verify, then trust, then verify again. It's why I'm not broke, and probably why I'm single. The line rang. She picked up on the 4th ring. Lassiter, still living the low life? Our old joke. I almost snickered. Withers, I need you to check on something. Quietly. Chapter 10. It had been 2 weeks of daily, almost dates. You can't really call them dates. We just met places. Sometimes lunch, sometimes dinner. Nothing serious. Benji couldn't show up on weekends anyway. Those were for his mom. Turns out, Dad had primary custody, and Mom, because of her job, got every other weekend. I won't say anything about priorities, but it doesn't stop me from thinking. Especially when a plainclothes police car started shadowing me. Belle and I had just gotten off the bus and were heading toward Taco Joe's for a Thursday meetup with Jack when I spotted it. Generic dark green sedan, the kind designed to blend in. Double mirrors on the driver's side. Except one wasn't a mirror, it was a spotlight. The engine sounded too powerful for a family car. This was one of those cruisers built to guzzle gas and give chase. I walked to the corner, deliberately waited for the light to change, and crossed the street. Obviously, they were here to make sure I used poop bags and disposed of them properly. Wouldn't want to leave dog crap littering the road. Annoying. I was completely innocent for once, hadn't done anything wrong except jaywalking. Nothing like Las Vegas heat and a sneaky police car to put me in a sour mood. The undercover car rolled up to the intersection. Guess who was driving? Mrs. Police Detective, soon-to-be ex-wife, Talia Briggs. I paused right in front of her and nodded politely. Don't know what game she was playing, but I could play games too. She's not very good because she doesn't know who she's playing against. I sat at a covered bus stop, dog in my lap, enjoying the shade. Sidewalks get hot in Vegas. Dogs can burn their toes if you aren't careful. I watched her drive down the road and park. I'm sure this is in the policy manual somewhere, but what happens if the person you're tailing spots you and doesn't care? I sat there for 15 minutes, waiting for her to make the first move, or at least forcing her to use up her gas running the air conditioning. What's life if you can't be petty? That put me in a better mood. I typed the license plate into my notes app. Official plate. I wonder if she called in for a late lunch or told her boss she was trailing a suspicious stranger. That made me laugh. I scratched Belle across the back and checked my phone. Maybe I'll start on my third $10 million. They say it's even easier than the first 2. I flicked a couple decimal places on the brokerage app and squinted to see if the dark green car was still there. Maybe she'd give me a ride. It is hot out. Probably not. She doesn't strike me as a dog lover. With exactly enough time left to walk to Taco Joe's, I left, taking a couple of alleys and side streets to look mysterious. Gotta hand it to her. She tailed me the entire way. Chapter 11. Neither Jack nor Benji were there. Paco and Maria were, and they brought me a cold lemonade when I asked for a cerveza. Lemonade is better for you in the heat than beer, Maria scolded as she handed me the cold sweating cup. The alcohol will turn you into shriveled jerky. My liver is already pickled, I said. She fired something back in Spanish. I'm pretty sure it translated to, "You're hopeless." Jack drove up in his work truck, jaw set, stern. Benji rode beside him, quiet for once. That youthful energy he always radiated. Someone must have unplugged the light bulb. I signaled to Maria, and she brought out 2 more lemonades. The dark green sedan had parked across the street. The windows were tinted, but the light caught on a rectangular object near the glass. A phone, maybe? Was she filming us? Once we had our taco platters, we sat in the awning shade, close enough to the serving window for the cool air and the scent of hot peppers to drift over us. I nodded toward the car. Is your ex insecure? Massively, Jack said, trying to stuff the avocado back into his taco. She's been projecting in a bad way. What do you mean? Mom cheated, Benji said. Benji, Jack warned, voice dropping low. We've talked about this. She's still your mother. I looked at the boy and frowned. Why don't you get us some lemonade while I talk with your dad? That's not fair. I want to hear. Jack gave him a look. Benji huffed, then walked to the window. Fine. As he left, I picked up a taco. Benji's 10 and he knows? Jack grimaced. Thanks to the internet. Kids grow up too fast. He knows, and he hates his mom because of it. Projecting? I asked. Because of the prenup, Jack continued. She gets nothing, not my savings, not Benji's college fund, not my 401k. Adultery is confirmed, but she's still on the hook for alimony and child support. Right now, I have primary custody. She has visitation every other weekend and once during the week, depending on her work schedule. That's textbook family law. Jack stared at the smiling man painted on the side of the red truck. She's bitter because I refuse to forgive her. Benji, too. Some betrayals you don't get over. No, you don't, I replied. She's not moving on? No, Jack said, slightly snorting. Now she's trying to prove that I had an affair, too, so the prenup becomes worthless and everything gets split evenly. And because I have a job, she argues she shouldn't have to pay alimony or child support. She make more? Nearly 50 grand. Without her paycheck, I can't afford the apartment. Jack looked away, his mouth twisting into a momentary fake smile. Benji wants to play baseball. I can't afford the uniform or the fees, let alone silly things like electricity. Why? I asked. His hand rested lightly beside his platter of tacos. His voice carried pain, one so deep it threatened to drown me. I hadn't cared for another person, another man, in a long time. Yet here I was, falling into his eyes, slow, inevitable, impossible to resist. I reached across the table and placed my hand on his. You are not alone. An impulsive act, one that could sever whatever we were building. But in that moment, something in me reached out. A connection, fragile as a spider's web and just as impossible to ignore. Hope, thin, but real. Did Jack feel it too? Or was I making a mistake? For a heartbeat, I thought he'd pull away. I kept my hand there anyway, offering steadiness, friendship, something more than either of us had words for. His hand didn't move. Jack glanced down, then up at me. No fear, no hesitation. His fingers shifted, curling around mine. I'll stand with you, I whispered. Then again, softer. You are not alone. Tears gathered in his eyes. The door of the dark green car opened. The detective stepped out, adjusted her sunglasses, and strode towards us. This time she wore heels, and they clacked against the pavement, her feet in a perfect straight line, like a runway model with vengeance pressed into her lips. Jack withdrew his hand. His eyes widened, and his lip trembled. Benji was returning with 2 large plastic cups filled with lemonade. He stopped. I mean, completely stopped. Didn't even blink. I took my phone out, hit speed dial, then hit record. Chapter 12. I fixed both eyes on the approaching detective, the good one and the stubborn one. Some days I don't know which is which. On a whim, I slid my taco platter across the table and took the seat next to Jack. Benji hadn't moved. His mom walked past him to our table and stared at Jack, the kind of stare just before she dove in for the kill. "Talia," Jack said. The woman didn't nod, didn't sit down. She stared at me. "You're Lassiter?" I took over, smiling. "Just so you know, I'm recording this conversation to send to Jack's lawyer when we finish. And as witness, Judge Withers is listening in. Paco and Maria wouldn't appreciate this becoming a crime scene." "Let's keep things civil," Judge Luis Withers replied quietly through the phone. "And let's make this quick. I have a full docket this afternoon." Talia shut her mouth, looking from me to the phone to Jack. Benji finally walked forward and set the drinks down in front of us. He mumbled something that sounded like, "I have to go back for the third one." I smiled at Talia. "Say hi. You wouldn't want the judge to think you're rude." Talia gave me the stare, the kind that says, "How can a bum know a judge?" But she didn't speak. Instead, she returned to her dark green sedan with the double mirrors on the driver's side and drove away. Chapter 13. Their landlord drop-kicked Jack and Benji out of their apartment. Couldn't tell if Talia had anything to do with it, but bitter women often do dangerous, if not stupid, things. Maybe she thought losing the apartment would drive them back to her cheating butt. She didn't know that Jack was evolving a spine, a nice, shiny, sturdy thing that didn't need her. I had a queen-sized bed in my room, and Arjun brought in a twin. Had to remove the desk, but we made it work. As long as Arjun received cash, he didn't care who used the room. Unable to afford a place, Jack and Benji moved in with me. Didn't have room for his furniture, so that went into storage. Over the month we lived in the motel, I taught Jack about financial independence, about working the stock market the Las Vegas way. Benji listened in. Smart kid. Jack wanted to change his number, but I talked him out of it. Talia could use that against him, claim he's keeping her from her son. Instead, he removed his soon-to-be ex-wife from Benji's school contact list, letting them know that her job schedule made her unreliable. Truth hurts. I imagined she screamed when she learned. Funny thing, Jack and I shared the larger bed. Benji didn't even sneeze. Kids read the room faster than adults. When Arjun had a larger space available, we moved to it. The dark green car shadowed me several times, tailed Jack indiscreetly, and even showed up at Benji's school, always just close enough to be seen. Never close enough for a "get out of here, you stinking witch." I suspect Talia was trying to find a time to corner Jack without me playing guardian angel. How can a cop be this dense? When will she see her family already crawled out of the hell she made? Trash belongs at the curb, not dumped in your own kitchen. She made one last attempt the week before the final divorce court appearance. Chapter 14. Why do bad things always happen on Tuesdays? Judge Withers texted at 7 a.m. The chime woke me up. I read it, feeling the morning fuzziness flee from my brain. Briggs' emergency custody case on the docket for family court at 11 o'clock. Did you know? I tapped Jack on the shoulder and showed him. He sat up, eyes wide. What has the witch done now? He called his lawyer. I sent the judge a thanks for the heads up. We were at the courthouse at 10, all three of us. We met his lawyer, hair mussed, suit wrinkled, and Elmer Fudd tie. Kid looked like he passed the bar last Christmas. She's claiming, he began, Benji's living situation is hazardous because it's in a motel and he doesn't have a room of his own. We strategized for an hour and walked into the courtroom and took our seats in the back and waited. Judge Jimenez presided. 5 minutes before 11, Detective Briggs and her attorney walked in. They didn't see us. Judge Jimenez didn't either, not until the bailiff said, "Would those involved in the Briggs custody case step forward?" We did. Judge Jimenez glanced at me. His eyebrows raised a millimeter. That was all. But it was enough to make Talia's lawyer glance at us, then at her, then back at us again. The man blinked twice, like his brain was buffering. "Who is that?" he asked. Meaning me? "Some homeless bum off the street," Detective Talia Briggs sneered. "Jack and Benji have been staying with him. Name's Lassiter. I call him Loser." The lawyer stared at her like she'd confessed to arson. Then he went pale. "Lassiter? Where does he live?" "In a crappy motel called Adam Heights," she said, dripping contempt. "It's so low class, I bet even hookers wouldn't use it." The lawyer's face drained of color. "Lady," he said quietly, "you're on your own." He frantically swept his papers into his briefcase, snapped it shut like it was a bear trap, and fled, briefcase banging against his leg as he bolted for the door. Judge Jimenez cleared his throat. "Mrs. Briggs, is there a problem?" "My lawyer just ran out," she exclaimed. Judge Jimenez glanced about the room, first at us, then at Talia. Our lawyer stood up. "Sir, if I may interrupt, we've reviewed Mrs. Briggs' claims and we have a solution. Lassiter has contacted the owner of Adam Heights, and he'll install a door between their current unit and the one next to them, so Benji Briggs will have his own room." "No!" The gasp came from Mrs. Briggs. The judge looked at the papers in front of him. "Is this a permanent solution?" "Depends on Jack," I said, and pulled a key from my pocket. "What do you say?" I held the key out. Jack eyed it. Benji eyed it, then looked at his dad, eyes wide with hope. Jack took a deep breath, held it, and glanced at his son. "What do you think?" "I like living there." "So do I," Jack said, and took the key from my hand. Our fingers touched. It was electric. The judge moved on to the next case, but the decision had already been made. Jack had chosen home. Benji had chosen hope. And somehow, Tuesdays didn't seem so bad. The end. Thank you, my friends, for joining me and Bentley for our new story. Please leave a like if you enjoyed. I'd appreciate it. Peace, my friends. I love you all. Oh, there's another special effect. See you guys later. Bye. Oh, see you guys later. Peace, my friends. I love you all. And so does Bentley. Hello? Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Am I not paying you enough attention? Are you having fun?